please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, members present this evening are myself, Mayor Morrow, Council members Gearboss, CO, Rhodes, McClellan, Tahar, and Dillon. From City staff, we have City Manager Campbell, Clerk Royal, Treasurer Bennett, Wastewater Treatment Superintendent Skull, DPW Director Fordyce, Police Chief Rennick, and Parks and Rec Director Scruggs. The rest of you who are in the audience this evening, if you'd be so kind to sign in the back to my left, we would appreciate that. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted unless there are amendments.
One amendment I'd like to add under discussion, the 150th budget.
Okay. Okay.
And I would like to move C-16-180 for discussion.
C-16-180, is that the breast cancer awareness resolution?
No, it's the updated investment report.
Tell me the number one more time, Mr.
180.
180. Oh, okay. Last one. So that will become the, wherever that fall, that will be the last business item then under new business. Is that right? Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We would recognize the presence of City Attorney Smith.
Yep, my apologies. Also present this evening is our Chief Legal Counsel, Scott Smith. Okay, so just so that I'm clear, Mr. Gearbaugh, you will be adding a fourth item under discussion, which is the 150th Task Force budget.
Yes.
And then Mr. Rhodes requested that the last item under the consent agenda be removed, and it will be the last action item under the new business section of the agenda this evening. Okay?
Correct. Thank you.
Is there a motion then to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Gearbaugh. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Ayes have it. The motion carries unanimously. There are no absences this evening, so we will dispense with that. At this time, we will entertain citizen comments on agenda items. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question on an item that appears on this agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
I'm Dorothy Brerenis at 564 Park Place. What I like to talk about is the sewer plant, supposedly the sanitation plant. I feel sorry for these people who live down there. They can't sit outside. They can't have their windows open. The smell is deplorable. Would you like to live down there? I doubt it. I think instead of spending money on the fireworks and flowers and all this, you better take care of that sewage plant. That's it. Thank you.
Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items? Please.
John Olson, Saline Area Chamber of Commerce. I just wanted to talk about the purchase agreement coming up again. I think, as you all know, I'm very excited about the possibilities this can bring to our community. I guess I would reiterate that we have, 3 long-standing, long-serving community members that are looking at bringing something to our town that is much desired and, in many respects, I think, much needed. Additionally, I've talked to the CVB. They are looking. We're below capacity on our nightly beds, and they're looking to get more hotels in our area. And I would sure rather see it here in Saline than somewhere else. So they'll be out trying to promote, and this could bring even more hotels to the area if need be. And further, I've gone out and talked to my different members, and talked to different people, and I have not gotten any negativity out of having this. And to the opposite side of that, I've had many of our businesses say, we really would rather have our business customers stay here in Saline and use the services in Saline as opposed to we always send them up to Ann Arbor, and then we lose all that business. So I'm just hoping that when the day is done, we can have a positive outcome to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items?
Mary Hess on the purchase agreement. I'm concerned that we owe $2.2 million on this property. And with all the goodies, as a taxpayer, I know a lot of people are excited about it coming, but a lot of people don't live in the city that are supporting the bills. I do not want the city to take on the moving of the utilities with an estimate cost of over $200,000. And I think it's sad that you are putting this burden on the taxpayers. Thank you.
Are there additional citizen comments on agenda items? No, then we'll proceed to the consent agenda. The following consent agenda will normally be adopted without discussion. However, at the request of any citizen or council member, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for council discussion. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Tahar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Dillon. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We move on to unfinished business, item 16-163. This is parking ordinance update. This is, of course, returning to us from our last meeting, ordinance number 787. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 13th, 2016 memo from Police Chief Rennick, and to approve or not to approve ordinance number 787, an ordinance to amend Articles 1, 2, and 3 of Chapter 86 of the Code of Ordinances to regulate traffic and vehicles. Is there a motion?
Move to acknowledge receipt and to approve.
Thank you, Councilwoman Tahar. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Seal. Chief Rennick, do you care to make any comments this evening?
I'd just like to say that in our last meeting, several questions were brought up, and I put those in the form of a memo after talking to our attorney, and hopefully those have answered those questions that the council had last time.
Very good. Are there questions for Chief Rennick? No. No questions? Okay, Chief, thank you very much.
Thank
It's
you.
easy. Any comments on this motion? Mr. Gearbaugh, please.
I was just going to say, I appreciate the change of the wording from referee to administrator. I think that does seem more appropriate. Thank you.
Mr. Rhodes?
I was going to make a similar comment, plus I wanted to thank Chief Rennick for adequately addressing all of our questions from the floor.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Anything further? No, then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Tahar, seconded by CO to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-161. This is purchase agreement for the sale of Sauk Trail Business Park, Lot 18, and a portion of 19. This will be a motion to approve or not to approve the real estate purchase and development agreement with Sauk Trails Court Properties LLC for Sauk Trail Business Park, Lot 18, and a portion of 19 as submitted.
Move to approve.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Seal. Mr. Campbell, do you want to begin? And then, of course, we can turn it over to Mr. Smith for a more thorough synopsis.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, one of the things that we attempted to do was to sit down with the developer and talk through some of the items on the proposed purchase agreement, and that was able to happen last week. And so the result you have before you in the document that was prepared by City Attorney Smith. And that was based on some past practices, principles, and discussions. But I think there's some items that might be slightly different that sometimes do occur in a project such as this. So unless there's questions for me, I was just going to turn over to Mr. Smith and let him kind of go through the purchase agreement.
Excellent. And before I yield the floor to Mr. Smith, what I'd like to propose is, Mr. Smith, subsequent to your comments and evaluation, Mr. Junga, if you or your team would like to comment, we would welcome those. And then I will open it up to the dais for questions, either to city staff, legal counsel, or the petitioner. So with that, Mr. Smith, the floor is yours.
I think prior to your last meeting, you had a memo from me asking a number of questions, noting how some of the requests from the buyer deviated from city practices on past sales, and questioning how a couple of provisions came together. Since meeting with the developers team last week, we came to a consensus on everything and a better understanding of what's occurring. So I can walk through some of the changes that have occurred and make some brief explanation if that's helpful to you. Normally, it's been our practice to give quitclaim deeds. In this case, we're getting title insurance anyway, and there's no problem giving a warranty deed because the title company will point out any concerns over title, and we can address those in giving the deed. They've requested that we provide not just a boundary line survey, but an ALTA survey, and we obtained an estimate for that, and the estimate seemed like a reasonable cost for the seller to bear. It's not uncommon for the seller in a real estate transaction to bear the cost of providing a survey. Inspections in the due diligence period, they've asked for a couple of additional 90-day extensions or the option to have those, and they're doing that in part because they're concerned that as they put things together, they want to make sure that our planning commission and our local review has enough time to get completed so that they don't need to come to ask for extensions. I'll point to another item on the agenda tonight where we're giving an extension to the developer of another piece of property because the initial 90 days wasn't long enough, and so they're simply asking for a couple of extensions to make sure that it can get completed. They also note that they need some approval from some state agencies and so forth, and those state agencies don't always work with the alacrity that we would like to see. We've addressed some of the other issues where we had a difference of opinion and compromised on language, and I think otherwise, most of what we had were clarifying issues where we needed to understand one another's intent, and the document now clearly expresses the intent in a way that's satisfactory for both parties, I believe. If there are other questions, I'm happy to address those.
Hang tight, Attorney Smith. Mr. Junga, and of course you have Greg and Mark with you as well, and I think Jim Heisler is attempting to come. I believe he had a zoning board of appeals meeting to attend in either Dexter Township or the city of Dexter. Would you, any of you gentlemen, care to make a comment at this time?
I would.
Why don't you, gentlemen, if you wouldn't mind coming to the microphone.
Thank you. I just first want to just thank the mayor, the council, and the staff for the hard work, early morning meetings, and the concerted effort and consideration of the sale of this city-owned property. And I appreciate as a Saline resident and a taxpayer your due diligence in this consideration, doing your job to keep the best interest of the city in mind. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Junga, any comments?
So I would just echo what Mark has said. I would also like to thank Scott. I thought our meeting last Thursday was very constructive, and I appreciate everybody's efforts to get us to where we're at.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Well, hang tight. There may be some questions for you as well. Mr. Smith, anything you'd like to add? You good? All right. Let's, I usually start to my left, so let's start to the right. Questions for either city staff, legal counsel, or the applicant. Mr. CEO, can I start with you, sir?
Yes, sir, please. Thank you. Mr. Smith, I know you mentioned briefly an ALTA owner's title policy. What is ALTA? Do you know, and what's the difference between that and a standard title insurance policy?
Well, it's a survey, is what they're looking for, is an ALTA survey, and it's the, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's a more detailed survey that will also show easements and other things on the site other than just the boundaries. of the site, so it provides more detail is what they're looking for,
And it's
without
prac-
getting into too much detail.
Okay, thank you. And as a practical matter, what's the difference between a quitclaim deed and a warranty deed?
A quitclaim deed just says that we're conveying to you any right, title, and interest in the property we might or might not have. Whatever we've got, you've got. A warranty deed says I'm conveying to you marketable title to the property and I'm warranting that I'm conveying that marketable title. In essence, if there's a problem with the title, they can come back and sue us, but the agreement already said that we were providing marketable title by a quitclaim deed. It requires us to provide title insurance. The title insurance company is going to require, in order to give the title insurance, that I have to give all of the same warranties or representations to the title insurance company, so it doesn't make any difference.
Okay. And then, I guess the last comment I wanted to make, if it's an appropriate time for that.
Sure.
Is that I certainly understand the buyer's desire for the possibility of extensions of the due diligence period. Much like Mr. Smith has already noted, we've done it on many other occasions where the purchaser or the potential purchaser has run into problems. So I have no problem with that at all.
Nothing further than that at this time, Mr. Seal?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Dillon, any questions?
Can you just point out where we stand with the overhead wires?
We're relocating those at our cost.
We will take the full cost of them. We're not going to, we discussed at one point, I thought,
Right.
capping it.
It will be at our cost, and what we will do is probably allocate some of that cost to the other parcels so that we'll look at recouping that when we sell the other two parcels.
So that means there will be no power lines going across any of that, right? Or is it just this one parcel?
No, it will
It will
take
go-
care of the power lines for all three of the parcels,
Okay.
including the Zippy parcel and the other
Right.
one further to the west.
So then theoretically, a portion of the full purchase price for Zippy is going to be recouping some of that cost.
That's correct. That's how we might look at it. And you know, it's not like the taxpayers are picking up this cost. It's just that we're going to net out less from the sale of the property than we would net out otherwise. I think that's the important distinction here. We're getting paid for the property. We're going to net out. It's like when you sell your house and there are repairs that you have to make, put a new roof on or do something else. You're netting out less from the sale of the house than you would if you didn't have to incur those costs.
Thank you very much.
Anything further, Ms. Dillon?
Not at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Tahar?
Yes, thank you. So a general question about, there were a couple of instances where you had pointed out to us that what was being requested deviated from our normal practice. And many of those requests, or many of those requested changes remain in the agreement, as I understand it, reading it. So my question is, are there any, can you think of future undesirable consequences of deviating from our usual practice in this case?
No.
Are we setting bad precedents?
No, I don't think so. We have to look at each proposed transaction in its total context, and as I said, deviating from our practice with respect to the survey, providing an alter survey rather than a boundary line survey, or deviating from our practice in terms of the title insurance in this particular case really doesn't make much difference to us.
Okay.
We've got to do an enhanced survey anyway because we're agreeing to split the lot. So we've already got to do a new survey of the property to accomplish that lot split.
Okay, thank you. I have a few more.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So paragraph 13A, at the very end of that paragraph, there are the opportunity, okay, so then, so there's option 1, option 2, or option 3 seem to be all equal. So a remedy might be simply terminating the agreement, or simply retaining the earnest money, or legal, other legal remedies? Is that? So this is, I understand this is legal language, not layperson language, so I'm not sure what the "or" means there, I guess, is the real question.
Well, it means that we can exercise any or all of those remedies,
Okay.
and they have the right to do the same. They asked to change it because they didn't want the situation where they had done all of their due diligence and incurred some significant cost, got site plans approved at significant cost and so forth, and then have the city say, well, we're just not going to close.
Right. Okay.
Here's your $10,000 back. We're not going to close. We found a better deal. And I said, well, that's fine, but then we also ought to have the remedy of being able to sue.
Okay, thanks. That's, so "or" in this case means any or all,
Yep.
but not just one of the
Right.
possible three. Okay. That. Paragraph 7A6.
What page, Mr. Hart?
Page 3. I'm using the lined out one, not the fair copy. No, wait, that's not right. Page 4. So this is number 6. At the very end, I'm not sure what, it says, "and facilities needed to," not sure what the rest of that sentence is supposed to be. Something seems to be missing. I mean,
Yeah,
you
we'll
know,
have to
it's
correct that.
Okay.
How should it read, Mr. Smith?
Probably "to" and should be deleted, and it should say "needed on the property."
Okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
There's a reason I shouldn't do my own typing, is what this is pointing out.
Well, maybe more of a reason why you should have an ex-librarian always proofread your writings.
Yeah, well, yes, once again, upholding my reputation here.
And I'm upholding mine.
Okay, so it's all good. And then I don't, sorry, now falling down with my reputation. So at some point, I can't remember, I didn't write down where this is. The city might, under the circumstances under which the city might repurchase the property at the selling price.
Right. We could repurchase the property at the selling price if the hotel fails. If
Right.
construction of the hotel fails to start within 6 months after the closing date.
Okay, yes, that's the one. So the selling price is the $430,000 or
Yes.
not $430,000 minus the $225 the city will have spent on?
$430,000 is,
Okay,
yes.
all right. Thank you, that's it.
That's it. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Rhodes, any questions at this time?
I have no questions this time. I do have comments for later when you're ready.
Excellent, very good. Mr. Gearbaugh, questions, sir?
Yeah, a couple questions regarding some of the zoning aspects of this. Could you please explain the legality and how the zoning aspect of this document, in terms of the signage rights to erect a 100-square-foot sign, this seems like we're jeopardizing the potential of this purchase agreement by depending on something that zoning is going to do. So if zoning says no, then this would negate potentially this purchase agreement unless the buyer is willing to say, okay, that's all right.
Well, zoning approvals are quite commonly conditions in purchase agreements, that they're going to need site plan approval. Zoning could say, I'm not approving your site plan. They may need some other kinds of approval from zoning, and our planning commission could say no, or we could say no to the appropriate zoning approvals. It can fall through if they don't get the curb cut. It can fall through if they're unable to get utilities and so forth. So this gives them a due diligence period in which to get that done. And if they can't get it done, they could get their earnest money back, and they terminate the agreement at that point, or they could waive it. Okay, it's commonly part of a due diligence period in a purchase agreement.
So you don't see a statement like this being a pressure on our zoning board to make it an approval as a
No,
result
because
of
we've
this?
indicated in here that the zoning board is, the planning commission, the zoning board of appeals, and the city council are to exercise all discretion that they have in approving or not approving the project or various aspects of it.
I'm just surprised to see something like that, because I think our ordinances are very lenient in our city, and having to put up billboards for some buildings are a concern.
Well, they were, it's not my condition, it's a condition they wanted placed in here, and we agreed that it could be placed in here.
And I understand, because this has come up before planning in the past. Thank you.
Yes.
What in additional costs will we expect, or potentially could incur as a result of not only the power lines, which I'd hoped we had a cap on, but apparently we're not going to. So we're talking about the survey, we're talking about the power lines, any other unforeseen costs that potentially we could incur?
Go ahead, Ted.
Sure. So, you may recall, Mr. Yerbach, from an earlier meeting, or actually from an email that we sent out. Utility line relocation, 10% realtor fee, so that would be $43,000, be the 10%. That would be split between the two realtors. The survey costs, and then the closing costs, which we don't have a ballpark on, but would be wouldn't be significant. So netting somewhere around 140, 150, somewhere in there probably.
But you don't foresee any other potential costs where we had to remove any kind of aspects that were built into that property when it was originally developed?
Not that staff's aware of currently.
But is that a contingency within the purchase agreement currently?
I don't believe so.
No.
I don't think
You know, there are other costs we're going to have. We may have some plan review costs that we would normally have with any project that develops. We've talked about perhaps vacating or partially vacating the cul-de-sac, Sauk Trail Court, depending on how the site plans for these various projects come together. There might not be a need for that, and we might save the cost of having to develop the court or pave the court at some point, and have more land to sell or dispose of. So there would be a cost of doing the vacation, but
if we vacate that land, it would be our property to sell, it would not
Yes,
vacate to the
because-
original
right.
properties that abort it?
Right.
Abort it? Okay. That's it
at
for
least
now.
until we sold part of it,
Got it.
the adjoining
Okay,
lot.
thank you.
Is it for now, Mr. Gearbaum?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Ms. McClellan, any questions?
I think they've all been addressed already.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. I'll open it up for questions one last time, first to either staff, legal counsel, or the applicant. No questions? Okay, then we'll transition to discussion on the motion, which was moved by Rhodes, seconded by CO to approve, unless staff or legal counsel have any additional comments at this time. Mr. Smith, you're good?
I am.
Mr. Campbell, you're good? Okay. Mr. Rhodes, since you were the mover of the motion, do you want to begin?
Yes, I will, thank you. And I move to approve this land purchase agreement for a variety of reasons, one of which is the fact that this land has sat vacant for many, many years and has not generated any revenue for the city, and in fact has costed a little bit because of having to mow at least the front edges of it along Michigan Avenue. And has been pointed out by Mr. Smith, the portion of the sales price is going to be what's used for relocation of the power lines. It's not going to come out of a general fund account. And the hotel, as everybody knows, has been on the wish list for many, many years. Saline Leadership Institute does a SWOT every year, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And one of the weaknesses that always shows up is the lack of overnight housing So there's obviously a need for it. This proposal will also generate structures that become taxable and generate revenue to the city. And the operation of those businesses will create jobs. And we always can use more jobs within the community. And probably the last item that comes to me at the moment is that by doing this, we can indicate that we are, in fact, a redevelopment-ready community. We don't have that specific title yet, but we are in practice, and we are a community that supports businesses and development. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Who else would like to make comment on this motion? Mr. Seal, please.
I've heard a number of folks mention an objection to the city's willingness to take on the additional expenses normally not associated with a sale of city property in this manner. I view these sorts of agreements to absorb some of these costs as much like a tax abatement you'd give to a business trying to attract to the community. It's an incentive. It's an incentive to the purchaser, the developer, to locate here, and I view it much in the way as I would a tax abatement, to try and bring a business to the community. And I certainly see no objection to it. To me, it's a one-time expense to what would otherwise be our bottom line in return for getting it back on the tax rolls, as Mr. Rhodes has pointed out, something that has not happened for a long, long time. So I think it's a good deal, bottom line.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Seal. Additional comments? Mr. Hart.
Yes, thank you. I have, since I first heard this project proposed, I have been inclined to be favorably disposed for it for a number of reasons, some of which have already been mentioned, one of which hasn't yet been mentioned, and that is that this is a proposal from Saline, from people from Saline. So we're talking about growing local businesses in our city, giving local business persons an opportunity to develop their businesses here, and I think that's very important for the community. And I came into this meeting with some concerns about some of the changes to the purchase agreement, and thank Mr. Smith for coming tonight and walking through those with us. My questions and concerns on those counts are alleviated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Ms. Dillon.
I just wanted to echo a few of the statements that Mr. Hart just made, and this agreement is not perfect by any means. I'm sure we would all like to tweak it a little bit more here and there, but in the end, what it's doing is bringing a hotel and a business to our area that we need. I was just at a seminar, and they talked about a key part of business development is accommodations, and we need a hotel to start the ball rolling for business development. So yeah, I'd like to see some things different, and it would have been nice not to rather to have a cap on some fees and some other things I wish were different, but in the end, I will support the agreement.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Additional comments? Ms. McClellan and then Mr. Gearbaugh. If you wish to speak, Mr. Gearbaugh. Apologies for putting you on the spot.
I'm going to echo what some of my council members, fellow council members have said. Kind of conflicted with this one. The positives for me are it's bringing development into town, and I think development breeds development. The work meeting today is kind of evidence of that. It's attractive to other developers coming in. It is a local business. We're supporting local people. I'm conflicted, though, with the many deviations and special accommodations that have gone on with this project so far, paying for the power line move, the surveys, having the city take on closing costs and all, selling survey costs, and then also that the debt to the city that the property currently has isn't going to be paid by doing this. So overall, I mean, I'm just really conflicted with it. So that's where I'm going to leave it.
Thank you. Ms. McClellan, Mr. Gearbaugh.
Yeah, my concerns with this is, as everyone has known, is the concern of what the sale price actually is. I know we've done incentives in the past, and mostly those incentives have been developed with companies that are investing significantly in terms of personal property tax, equipment, and so forth, and that's why we had the industrial park, and that's the reason why this property didn't sell. We had a recession, we had manufacturing leaving the state, we had a number of reasons. When we rezoned this property, we knew that this property would become more valuable, extremely valuable, as a result of even now knowing that Zippy Car Wash is willing to pay us $550,000 for a 4-acre site right next door to this property. And the reason being likely because they know that down the road 2 miles, they would have paid $1.5 million for a similar sized lot. From my concern, I understand we're trying to get a company or a business to come into town, but I also understand that the city has a cost and has debt to which we must cover. I am too, as Mr. McClellan has mentioned, extremely concerned about all the additional costs that are coming out of the sales agreement to basically to a point where it's going to net to zero. Fortunately, we are selling the property next door for the full price, but again, that is a reason to understand why this offer is being made this way. I understand that previous discussions and everything have been talked about a boutique hotel, which, from my perspective, was always supposed to be centered for downtown, not on the edge of our town. That's one of the reasons why this property is completely beneficial to the buyer, not to the seller. It's an aspect to which I believe the city should have more control in terms of what they're incurring as costs, and that we should be getting a decent price for this. I understand this is coming through, but we've worked on other properties that had a lot more concerns to them than this property. And I think at this point, the fact that we're not taking the benefit to benefit our taxpayers at the price or a more reasonable price is a detriment by this council and to our taxpayers.
Thank you, Mr. Gearbo. Any additional comments? Well, I'll try to be brief, but let me share some thoughts. First, for the community's benefit, I want to talk for just a moment about the process. And again, as I articulated in the past, myself and Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes and staff were first approached by these gentlemen in the waning months of 2015. And I think it was shortly before Christmas that we first had an opportunity to sit down to discuss your plans. And subsequent to that, there have been many conversations, a council work meeting. It was added as a discussion item at a subsequent council meeting. There was a special council work meeting scheduled for the early morning hours. And now a very thoughtful discussion with legal counsel and all interested parties tonight. And I want to note, and this has been referenced by Attorney Smith as well as Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes and I believe City Manager Campbell, we had a very constructive, very thorough meeting this past week, consisting of myself, my colleague Mr. Rhodes, Attorney Smith, Mr. Caparisi, and then the petitioner and his team. I think we met for about an hour and a half. We resolved almost all of the outstanding issues and conflicts that we had with one another, if I can use that word. I'm not sure it's the most appropriate, but it's what came to mind. And I feel really confident in this document. It was appropriately stated earlier this evening by my colleague, Ms. Dillon, that this is not perfect, and it is not. But very seldom in government are there perfect proposals, perfect solutions to problems. I will note again that even with some additional costs, the city will make money on the sale of this property. I want to repeat that one more time because I think it's important. And of course, good people are free to disagree and you're entitled to your own opinion. You're just not entitled to your own facts. The city will make money from the sale of this property. More importantly than the price or the amount that we receive, as has been mentioned earlier, we get to see a boutique hotel created by local business people who are deeply invested in this community, a boutique hotel that is unique and indicative to the character and look of Saline, has been a goal and objective for decades. In addition to a boutique hotel, we hopefully gain a standalone, family-owned Junga Ace Hardware, a legacy business that hopefully will exist and prosper for decades to come. And in addition to all that, and of course, jobs being created and important services and amenities being provided to our citizens, it adds this parcel and a portion of another parcel to the tax rolls. That's what's really critically important here and something that hasn't been done. These properties have sat dormant for decades. So again, I am in support of this, not a perfect solution. The other thing that I would add is I think this issue, to a certain extent, is sort of a legacy defining or legacy influencing vote. And I will tell you what, if 10, 15, 20 years from now, people look back on my tenure as mayor and say, Marl wasn't great, but gosh darn it, he really fought, he was really a fierce advocate for jobs, for investment, for expanding the tax base, then I will feel like I did my job and I did it sufficiently. So again, I'm supportive of this, very supportive of it. Appreciate everyone's effort. I appreciate the patience of the applicant and his team. And like many of my colleagues, I urge a yes vote on new business item 16-161. Are there additional comments? Then we'll proceed to vote. It's been properly moved by Rhodes, seconded by CO to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Ayes have it, and the motion passes.
Can I just make sure?
Yep, please.
Mr. Gearbaugh and McClellan's name.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll proceed now to new business item 16-174. This is purchase of standby pump for lift station. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 13th, 2016 memo from wastewater treatment Superintendent Skull to approve or not to approve the purchase of a Sulcer ABS pump at a cost of $12,260 from Hydrodynamic.
Move to acknowledge receipt to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Tahar. Mr. Skull, although it's not, no, go ahead. No, you're good. Even though it is not directly related to this, because we had a comment from one of our constituents and residents about the wastewater treatment plant, can you comment again for the record? We talked a little bit last week about what's being done, when we expect it to conclude, the fact that we're putting out an RFP for an odor analysis, and then also scheduling some public open houses for folks to tour the plant. I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, but
No.
all topics, I think it would be valuable for you to discuss for the public record.
Yes, by all means. I'd like to first start off by saying the city has been working on odor abatement now for well over 20 years. We spent at least $2 million on direct investment to remediate the odors. And this year alone, we spent at least $50,000 to help alleviate the odors. It's been a bad summer, it's been hot weather, and we've had a lot of construction updates that have probably contributed to the odors, and we are looking at putting an RFP out to examine the possible sources of the odors and to work to alleviate them. And what else?
About the RFP.
Oh, the RFP, yes. It's not out yet. We're working on the details of it, but it would be submitted for an odor study and possible to locate the sources of the odors, what plant processes may be leading to those odors, and possible solutions to those problems. And that should go out very shortly. It's about 95% complete.
Okay, good. Now, if you could address this motion before us.
I'm sorry?
Could you address the motion before us?
The
on
pump, yes.
standby pump?
Sorry. Yeah, this is for the Southside Lift Station, which is located on Saline Island Road. It's the largest station that the city operates. And we try to have a backup pump because of the long lead times involved in purchasing one. And this is for a 15 horsepower pump. It's a relatively large pump for our system, but much smaller than it was originally designed for. We found the original design had larger pumps which were causing operational issues, mainly cavitation, in which vapor bubbles form behind the impeller, and it causes the destruction of the impeller. It actually eats the metal. And that's usually caused by a pump being improperly sized for the station. We found the smaller pumps perform better, and that's what we're looking to purchase, is a second smaller pump.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions for Mr. Skull? Mr. Seal, we'll start with you and come down the line.
Two, please, Mr. Skull. First of all, you say in your letter that lead time to purchase is 12 to 14 weeks, and yet Hydrodynamics say we have one on the shelf.
Well, Hydrodynamics, I shouldn't say unfortunately, the way it works with wastewater equipment, and I imagine it works the same way with a lot of municipal supplies, is there's vendors that are authorized to sell those pieces of equipment. So it's really hard to go from, if you have a particular brand you need to go with because of the configuration of the tank, it's very hard to get competitive bids. Hydrodynamics is a company we've dealt with before. We purchased the last pump from them. The other pump we have is still the remaining Gorman-Rupp pump, the larger one that we're hoping to pull and keep that on standby.
So in other words, if you bought it directly from the manufacturer, it'd be a 12 to 14 week lead time?
Well, they have to, they usually come from Sweden, so that's where the lead time is. They don't have these sitting on the shelves for the most part. I think there's we tried to locate one. We think we may have a lead on one that may be a shorter time, but it will be through Hydrodynamics. They're the sole supplier.
All right, and the last question is this. We have one on the shelf. Is there a shelf life on these things? Seals, bearings, things of that sort?
I don't think there's a practical shelf life. I mean, if you're talking 10 years, yeah, you may have an issue, but I don't think 5 years or 2 years. Usually these pumps last 3 or 4 years. The shelf life is an issue.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Anything else, Mr. Seal?
No, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Dillon?
So the pump that you're proposing to purchase will go into use. It will not be a spare. You're going to be replacing the leaking one?
We're going to replace the older one. It functions well, but this one was, and this was more after the memo went out, after speaking with the guys at the plant, that we feel that we'll have the newer pump in there and have the older one as a backup if needed. These are extremely heavy pumps, so normally we have to get outside assistance to get them in and out of the lift station.
Okay. But is the one that you're replacing the one that actually has a problem?
The one that
I guess I'm confused. It says last week a problem was detected with one of the two pumps.
Mm-hmm.
So
we have one pump is currently in the shop being rebuilt under warranty.
Okay.
They extended the warranty first because of the situation in which the pump failed. So currently we have one pump in the station, one permanent pump, and we have one backup rental pump in there. That's why I kind of want to move as fast as we can on this. But the new pump, we decided will probably go in directly, then we'll pull out the older pump, service it, and keep it in rotation, keep it ready to go if need be.
Okay, and return the rental pump.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dillon. Additional questions? No? Bob, thank you very much. Any subsequent discussion on this motion? No, then it's been properly moved by Rhodes, seconded by Tahar to acknowledge receipt and to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, the motion carries unanimously. We move on to new business item 16-175. This is request of wage increase for lifeguards and swim instructors. This will be a motion to acknowledge receipt of the September 14th, 2016 memo from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs and to approve or not to approve the proposed wage increase for lifeguards and swim instructors.
I'll move to acknowledge the receipt of the memo.
I'll second that.
All right, moved by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon to acknowledge receipt of the memo from September 14th, 2016 from Director Scruggs. Ms. Scruggs, would you care to comment on this?
Yeah, the memo has a lot of information, and I tried to be as thorough as possible to kind of address some of the situations that we're having currently. And I just want to go over it quickly, and please interrupt if you have questions or ask at any time. In the fall, which we're in right now, is typically, and everyone goes through this, it's a very difficult time where our students are leaving to go to the universities, and we're we're attracting the U of M and Eastern students to come back to work. And this year in particular, it is disastrous. We lost probably more than 50, 60% of our staff. They went off to school. We had a large group of seniors that, their first time university students. And our high school students, they're all in water polo season and swim team season, so they're not available to work. And for some odd reason, we're not getting our U of M students, Eastern students, Washtenaw, Concordia, they're not taking jobs right now, apparently. So we're at kind of we're at a crisis right now. And we're piecing things together. In fact, last week when I wrote this memo, we were going to not have our pool open on Friday evening. Wouldn't have been a terrible thing because it was a home football game. I think all of Saline was there when they beat Bedford. But fortunately, one of our lifeguards stepped up and took the shift. So we didn't have any closures last week. This week, we're facing one evening, which is, again, Friday. This Friday evening, we just don't have any staff to fill all of our positions. Now, things that you need to know are we are required to have lifeguards. It's state mandate. It's you might ask the question, and we've been asked the question about how come hotels can not have lifeguards or post swim at your own risk. We're not allowed to. We're a public municipal facility, and the state has certain guidelines that require us to have lifeguards. We are open 5:30 in the morning till 10 p.m. Monday through Friday, and on the weekends 6 until 6. So essentially, we're open 106 and a half hours a week, and if you would translate that, we need to fill 106 and a half hours of lifeguarding. That's with one lifeguard. What we've done, my aquatics coordinator, Stephanie, unfortunately she couldn't be here, she's actually lifeguarding tonight. She's been guarding out of her 40-hour work week plus 30 hours. And she typically in the fall she'll lifeguard here and there, whatnot, to fill in gaps, but this year it's getting really bad. I'll keep going on. We've done a lot of advertising. We placed an ad in the MLive. We've gone to every job posting for all of the universities around us. We've gone physically, or Stephanie went to all of the youth groups at the churches in the Saline, Ann Arbor area, trying to promote, hey, if you're a lifeguard, come on, we'll hire. We're offering lifeguard training classes. We have 2 coming up, one in October, one in November. We've been recruiting for that. We've posted them all around, actually took posters out to U of M and to Eastern and Whole Foods and REI and everywhere that we could think of. We've put the word out through Saline. Jill Dernan from State Hartman Insurance actually had some lists for all of the neighborhood home associations, and she put the information out there. We've talked to just about everyone in Washtenaw County. So we're kind of at we don't know what to do. We feel, or I feel, that number one, our wages, we have not increased our wages in a very long time, since 2008. And just so you know, we're extremely frugal. We're trying to, we're trying to piece this together. We're trying to, we're not trying to pay more than what the going wage is for lifeguards or for any of our employees. And we really need to, all of our lifeguards right now and swim instructors are at $8.50 an hour, which is minimum wage. And January, it is going up to $8.90, January 1st. But when we did a survey, plus M-Parks actually coincidentally did a survey this fall as well, and we are well below where most people are paying their lifeguards. And I have a little spreadsheet in there so you can see. We tried to use comparable facilities that we're all drawing from the same pool of lifeguards, essentially. And one thing in thinking about this, I was talking with my staff today, and one thing that they pointed out is that, for example, Rolling Hills, they've expanded. What they used to be was they needed, say, 100 lifeguards. Well, they've expanded their water park. Now they require 150. So now the pool of people is just shrinking. There's new facilities in this area. I think those are some of the contributions to this shortage. I know the economy definitely is better. It is getting better. Parents are not wanting their kids to work. They're sending their kids to college and telling them college is their job. You don't need to work part-time. There's several other things that are contributing to that, but plus we're competing against everyone else. I mean, I drive around Saline, Ann Arbor area, and there's so many signs out there saying hiring full-time, part-time. The dry cleaner here in town, I talked to George Douglas the other day, he's having to work 12-hour days because he can't find someone. So anyway, there's something's going on. I think a lot of it is the economy. So as we move forward, we've come up with a lot of different creative solutions, or we're trying to. One is, lifeguards, in order to be hired, you have to be a lifeguard. You have to have your certification. We require it through the American Red Cross. It's between a $200 and a $300 investment for a 15-year-old or, a teenager, young adult. So we actually in-house, Stephanie Ferguson, our aquatics director, is certified to teach lifeguarding. She can recertify. She can certify in first aid, AED, and CPR, which are requirements for having your lifeguard training. And a couple of things that we've done is we're lowering our costs. We're trying to make it as reasonable as possible, rather than charging it as a regular program. I think our mayor's not feeling well.
I'm just hanging on to
Okay.
this motion,
All
Ms.
right.
Scruggs. I apologize.
All right.
I'm really under the weather.
Okay. So in any event, and so what we've done is we've looked at all of the other salaries around this area. We've come up with a recommendation for some wage increases, and also kind of redefining what our lifeguard positions are. For example, lifeguard 1 would be our new lifeguards, our newly certified lifeguards, ones that work our non-premium shifts, meaning after school hours, so like 3:15 to 10 o'clock is a non-premium shift, and on the weekends. This is someone that we have a lot of students that work sometimes 4 hours a week. They take one shift because that's what their parents allow them to. So we piece together our schedule based on, we might have one person working 4 hours, one person working 20 hours. We're maxed out at 29 and a half hours a week. Our part-time are not eligible to work more than that. So that means we need more lifeguards in order to fill all of our shifts. Currently, a lifeguard 1, or actually all lifeguards are at $8.50, so we're recommending that we go a little bit above what minimum wage is, which would be $9.25, and then a step 1 would be $9.50 and $9.75 as a step 2. Our lifeguard 2 is someone that has more experience, has been a lifeguard for more than 1 year, and who also works our premium shifts, which are 5:15 in the morning until 3:15 in the afternoon, and that's during our school year. And it's someone that is actually working more consistent hours, so at least 15 hours a week. And that rate would be $10.50, $11, and $11.50. And then this is something a little bit different, but it makes, as we were going through this, it really made sense. So for example, we have a building supervisor, so right now we have someone working, kind of manning the facility if there's emergencies, if there's a customer issue, just kind of picking up, cleaning up, customer service, customer care. We would want to have a lifeguard, we haven't decided on the name, but lifeguard supervisor, someone that would do the same thing in our aquatic center. Someone that would help to facilitate our classes, our water aerobics, our aqua zumba, customer care, take care of emergencies, but also would be there as an active lifeguard as well. But this is someone a little bit more well-versed in being a lifeguard. In addition, there's a few, our swim instructors, same thing, we're at $850 and we're recommending jumping that up a little bit. Any questions? Sorry for rambling on.
Thank you for the very thorough presentation, Ms. Scruggs. Ms. Dillon, you have some questions?
I do. I have a few. First, on your handy-dandy spreadsheet, it talks about Pittsfield Township Parks and Rec paying $16 an hour. Do they still have vacancies at $16 an hour?
Well, you know, Pittsfield Township rents pools from Ann Arbor Public Schools to offer swim lessons, but they're required to have a lifeguard. They work 2 hours a week. So I probably shouldn't have put them on there because it's really not a good apples-to-apples comparison. But 2 hours a week, they can't bring someone in at $10 an hour.
Right.
So they have two people that they use, and they're working the swim lessons.
Right.
So I don't know if they have vacancies or not.
That's okay. Okay, I was just wondering, because that was the one that was just sort of the anomaly.
Actually, they're bumping that up to 20 starting January 1st.
Wow. How many lifeguards are needed?
We have 180 hours of lifeguarding shifts that we have to cover. I can't give you a number.
And so, okay.
Because, like I said, I have some that are working 20 hours a week, some that are working 4 hours a week, some that are all in between.
Okay. Because I'm just kind of concerned about this cost of absorbing the cost for certification at $225 to $300 per person. That could add up pretty quickly.
Well, we're also asking them for a commitment.
Right.
So in order...
I mean, so you're going to have them paid up front?
Yes.
And you would reimburse them after the 6 months?
And that's one of those creative things that we've picked up from other agencies. Actually, in the survey that MRPA did, there were 15 communities that responded, 8 of which over this summer had to shorten their pool hours or close their pools during certain times because they didn't have enough lifeguards. You know, one of the questions were, you know, what were some of the incentives or some of the creative ideas that you've had? And that was one of them that quite a few have been implementing and seems to be working.
Right.
One thing we did, sorry to keep going on. One thing that we did last year, it didn't quite work, but it was the idea was we would offer a daytime lifeguard training class, which meant those people, if they're available to take the class daytime, they might be available to lifeguard daytime. It really didn't work out that way. We ended up offering the class, but someone was getting certified through like Washtenaw County Community Health and Wellness Center and a couple other places.
I'm just afraid that you're going to absorb the cost of training all these kids that are going to go off to college and go work someplace else.
If they're not committing to the 100 hours or
Right,
6
well,
months, they're
I know
not going to
even
get
after
reimbursed.
that, I mean, 6 months, that's a season, you know, that's, you know, a school year. And then they're going to leave in the fall again and leave you high and dry.
Yeah, you know, a lot of our kids come back year after year. I have some people that have actually volunteered when they were 13 and 14. They're in their 20s now, and they still come back, you know, from college or during holidays and work for us. I always tell them they always come back.
No, that's good to hear. That's something that we wouldn't know on this side.
Right.
Now, on your steps, what is the time frame? What is the protocol for stepping?
The steps are essentially after a year of service, we would evaluate, give them, well, we do evaluations throughout the year, but we would give them some feedback and say they work for us for that season. They would go off to school. When they come back, we would evaluate whether they would be eligible for a step.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, some of these, it's like 25 cents. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
really
But actually, that really helps to bring people back in because, hey, if you're not going to give, you know, a 25-cent an hour raise, you know, it's 25 cents an hour.
Right. No, I guess in
It
that
adds up.
context it is. Now, does the rec center currently have swim instructors that are not water safety instructors
Yes,
certified?
yeah.
That's permitted? And
Yes.
That's a practice that we currently do?
Correct, and we have for 25 years. My aquatic director, plus I have probably 8 that are WSI certified, and they actually are the ones that train our younger kids. We start them with as a volunteer, like a swim aide or junior instructor, and they learn how to teach. They're paired with another certified instructor, like Mrs. Mack. TJ had a lot of these swim aides, and they came up through the ranks and learned, and then went on to become WSI certified as well. And that's a large investment as well.
Right, that's what I just wasn't sure whether that was something that.
Yeah, as long as American Red Cross just requires us to have, like my aquatics director's WSI certification.
So they don't have to tag team, you can have a non-certified teaching lessons, they don't have
Yes.
to be paired up with someone that is
Correct, because
certified?
we train them and we are monitoring their lessons.
Okay.
And it's very strict. The American Red Cross has strict guidelines on level 1, you have to accomplish these skills in order to move on to level 2. And we have a game plan for every single level.
And do you encourage them to get certified on their own? Okay. I just had some concerns because I know that part of that certification is, drowning prevention and learning how to assess. And I don't know that that's a skill that a teenager would normally have.
For our lifeguards?
No, for swim instructors.
Oh, yeah, that's part of like I said, the American Red Cross has a very strict curriculum for each of the levels, and they are trained on how to teach that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Additional questions for Director Scruggs. Mr. Gearbaugh.
Actually, it's kind of directed to you, but not really. In order to make this more effective for you in the future, how can we streamline this? I didn't realize that we would be necessarily having to approve you raising salaries for this type of thing. Maybe Mr. Campbell can address this a little bit better. I'm only thinking that we would be making a budget adjustment for you as council. So perhaps a clarification on that so that this won't be something, because I see this as being a very critical aspect of Carla's operations, and that she should be able to address this immediately in terms of being able to get her staff in board. And I think her plans are very well laid out. I just want to make sure this is something you can do quickly in the future.
Right, and I would concur with that through the review and approval of the city manager's office to do that, because Carla and her staff did a very detailed job, very thorough job in this business case, right? That's what we talked about when we asked her to put it together. And so essentially, yes, needs to be, the reason we brought it here was because, just as you mentioned, the bottom line is it's going to need amendment to the budget. Staff is happy to, and I would concur that I agree that it would be, if the administration were able to do that on a quicker basis, would be much more efficient for the operation.
From my perspective, I'm just asking that maybe this motion should be, we move to approve the budget, not necessarily the proposed wage increases in lifeguards, because I don't want to be stepping into
Certainly.
your activities of management.
That's a good idea. Anything else, Mr. Gearbaugh?
No, thank you.
Any additional questions?
Could I say one last thing regarding the budget? Honestly, this really isn't going to be any type of increase. We've kind of stretched thin pretty well. We're under budget right now, and in the next few weeks, we're still going to be under budget. So I really don't think we're going to have a major impact on our budget this year.
Okay.
So.
From my perspective, then, I'm thinking that this is just an operational aspect and very well informable for us, because we need to understand what potential risks are at the rest center for you in terms of safety of our attendees. So thank you.
Additional questions, Mr. Rhodes?
Not a question, but a comment, if I could.
Please.
Councilmember Dillon and I attended a presentation last week put on by the Ann Arbor Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, and it does appear that the number one concern, difficulty of restaurants, hotels, and the entertainment industry is trying to get employees, trying to get staff. So while this may help, I suspect it's not going to solve the problem.
And that, if you read through my memo a little bit further, we're talking about maybe kind of a cultural shift in our lifeguards and trying to create this, this different, necessity for kids wanting to be lifeguards and so on and so forth.
If there's nothing further, then we'll proceed to vote on the motion made by Gearboss, seconded by Dillon, to acknowledge receipt of the memo dated September the 14th. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And what about a motion, or you can finesse the verbiage if that's your wish, to approve or not to approve the proposed wage increases for lifeguards and swim instructors?
Move to approve.
Moved by Rhodes, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dillon. Any discussion? Well, I'll just add to Councilmember Gearboss' comments, Director Scruggs. I think your memo and your presentation was very thorough.
Thank you.
Obviously, you did a lot of research and analysis on this. I think this is a solid proposal, but my preference is very similar to his, if not identical, which is this is an operational decision. So in the future, if there's a way to avoid bringing it back to us so you can act quickly, expediently, in a way that benefits the facility that you oversee, I think that would be ideal.
Okay, thank you.
If there's nothing further, we'll proceed to vote on a motion made by Rhodes, seconded by Dillon, to approve. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously. We'll move on to new business item 16-167. Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, could I trouble you to take over the rest of the meeting?
Yes, sir.
I apologize for feeling under the weather, but I need to make an exit. But I'm very much in support of new business item 16-167, and I'll leave it to you, Mayor Pro Tem. If you want to sit here, you can stay there.
I'll just stay here unless I need the gavel. Might need to control people.
Carly is kind of rowdy.
Yeah, she is. All right, so we are at motion 16-176, letter of support for the Michigan Invasive Species Grant Program, to acknowledge receipt of the September 15th, 2016 memo from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs to approve or not approve the letter of support from Mayor Marl endorsing the Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area, CISMA. Do I have a motion?
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Second.
Ms. Scruggs, do you wish to make some comments on that?
Other than, I know that Washtenaw County has asked for our support, and I think this is something that is well needed. Going out into our parks, see a lot of invasive things, and if we're not careful, we're going to lose a lot of our native plants and have a lot of not so good things in our parks, in our lawns and everywhere else. So.
Questions? Mr. Gerber?
Just real quick, will this be in joint with Environmental Commission too, because of the aspect that it has an impact on our environment?
I'm not sure. I think that would be a good idea to take that to the next commission meeting. I think that's next Wednesday. Is that right?
It's soon.
Yeah.
This Wednesday.
This Wednesday,
This
yes.
Wednesday.
This
2
Wednesday.
days.
This Wednesday.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Yeah,
All
Mr.
those in
Rhodes.
favor? Oops, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, just comment. So I had never heard of a CISMA, so I went looking for information and found that there are other areas already established in quite a few areas of the state and not so many in southeast Michigan. So I think this is a good step forward for us.
And that's what this is. Washtenaw County is trying to create this association with Washtenaw County and Livingston County. And together, they're going to apply, or they're applying for a grant to create this association.
Okay, any other questions, comments? We will move then to voting on 16-176. It had been moved by Gearboss, seconded by Terhar, to acknowledge receipt of the September 15th, 2016 memo from Parks and Rec Director Scruggs to approve the letter of support from Mayor Marl endorsing the Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area, CISMA. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion's passed. Thank you. Now move to 16-177. Request to change date for annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony. To acknowledge receipt of the September 13th, 2016 letter from Saline Chamber of Commerce Executive Director John Olson to approve or not approve the request to change the annual Christmas tree lighting ceremony date from December 2nd, 2016 to November 29th, 2016.
Move to acknowledge and to approve.
Second.
Second.
We'll have Ms. McClellan be the second on that one. Acknowledge receipt and to approve. Mr. Olson, do you wish to make any statements, comments?
Actually, that was, I had sent out the applications for 2017, and when I got his back, he had filled it out for 2016. So I apologize. Linda Terhar mentioned that it probably should have had a memo with it, but I noticed that he had a different date than what I had for 2016. So that's why it was brought forward to request a different date.
Yeah, we just thought Tuesday works better than Friday.
Makes sense to me. Questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion 16177, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion has passed. Thank you. Next one is 16178, requirement of competition ordinance, ordinance number 788, to acknowledge receipt of the September 14th, 2016 memo from Emily Reisberg to approve and adopt or not adopt proposed ordinance number 788, an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 3, Division 9, Section 2-169 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the requirements of competition. We have a mover.
I'll move to acknowledge receipt of the memo.
Second.
And the second was from Councilmember Terhar. And we are just acknowledging receipt at this particular point in time. Councilmember Gearbaugh, as the mover, do you wish to start?
Yeah, I just would like to have Mr. Campbell review this and how this would impact anything else that we do in the future.
Sure. My pleasure. So the reason this came about in our purchasing policy, which is this is based on this ordinance, items that exceed $15,000 in cost, it's required to be competitively bid, except for there's two exceptions currently. One is if it's a professional service, and two, if it's for an emergency situation. So what is the genesis of this is, you may recall that what was approved, the City Council approved for the fiscal year 17 budget included a $60,000 line item for a used bucket truck for DPW. And so if trying to bid out, put together specs for a used bucket truck are, I would say, near impossible, if not impossible, just because it's a used truck. So typically what we do for used equipment is go out and evaluate it and determine if it's what we need and if it's a quality. But currently, because it's not an emergency situation nor a professional service, currently we would have to bid it out. So after talking with the City Attorney's Office, this was what they're proposing, that City Council could review a potential purchase, a proposed purchase, and if it's deemed that it'd be appropriate to relax those guidelines or deviate from those guidelines, make exceptions, if it's for the benefit of the community, then the council would allow that. So this certainly would not, still keeps it in the purview of the council. It doesn't, for instance, doesn't give to the city manager or that nature. But this just would give the city council an opportunity to say, in an instance like this, with a used piece of equipment, that it's typically or basically impossible to spec it out for a bid. Based on staff's recommendation, in this case, recommendation to purchase a specific used bucket truck.
Thank you. And so basically, it's just allowing us to approve your sole source recommendation and it'll be part of our public meeting in our approval session.
Correct. We would still obviously bring this to council, present it, this particular purchase with a recommendation, and then council could deliberate and determine if that's what they wanted to do.
Okay. I just didn't realize we never had that opportunity to do that. I thought we did, so thank you.
Other questions, comments on this particular motion? In which case, I would ask for a vote on the portion of the motion that has been moved and seconded, which is to acknowledge receipt of the September 14, 2016 memo from Emily Reisberg. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That portion of the motion has been approved. Now I look for a mover and seconder to approve and adopt or not adopt proposed ordinance number 788, et cetera.
Move to approve and adopt.
Second.
Second.
And I believe Ms. McClellan got that one in ahead of time also. Okay, questions, comments? Ms. Starr.
Yes, so just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, the only change to the ordinance is the addition of point C. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? I've asked for votes then to approve and adopt proposed ordinance number 788, an ordinance to amend Chapter 2, Article 3, Division 9, Section 2-169 of the Code of Ordinances regarding the requirements of competition. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion has been approved. Thank you. We'll now move on to 16-179, which is the First Amendment to Real Estate Purchase Agreement, 600 North Maple Street, to acknowledge receipt of the September 15th, 2016 memo from City Manager Campbell to approve or not approve the First Amendment to the Real Estate Purchase Agreement with 600 North Maple LLC as presented.
Move to acknowledge and approve.
Second.
Acknowledge and approve. Comments, questions? Seal.
What is the delay in reaching agreement with the seller company on amending the easement?
You may recall in a previous communique that I put out, in the current agreement between the city and American Tower, the easement road that they have to access their tower and the facility, the compound, there's not language that says that the city can unilaterally relocate that they need to basically approve of that. And so we contacted them to say, hey, it seems reasonable to us that you're still going to have access to it, and we, they at that time thought that, again, you may recall that they've also, over the last several years, have attempted for an extension in the agreement, the current agreement that we have, that we lease the property to them for the tower, expires in 2026. And we've had several iterations over the last several years, from in perpetuity to 99 to 50 to, I think 50 or 40 might have been about the least amount. But they were saying, hey, we really need an extension. And so after we talked and said, well, that's not probably a good choice to try and use that as leverage to try and make the city, because the city, the most recent position of the city council is no, we're not interested in extending that. And so what we, after much back and forth and certainly a lot of much appreciated assistance from the city attorney's office, we're moving forward. I think we're real close. We had an on-site meeting with folks from American Tower, as well as the developers, city staff, DTE, and the like, to go out to the site and exactly see what the issues and challenges may or may not be. And so, actually, as of today, I believe we received it. Mr. Smith and I received an email from the developer saying that they were on course to be able to do the...
They've thrown in a couple of other things.
Right.
The difficulty really comes in that when you relocate that entryway and slide it down to one end instead of the other, you have to relocate the utilities. There's a slab that has to be moved inside. There are some other changes that have to occur. And so American Tower rightfully is concerned about how all of that's going to be done. And when you relocate the utilities, you're going to have to cut off the utilities for a while and run a generator, and they want to make sure that the cost of that are covered and some other things. And then that's brought up some other questions on the developer's part with regard to the cell tower and the generators and how they might want to screen it or put a slab up and so forth. So the parties have been going back and forth a little bit over the last several weeks, trying to make all of this gel in a mutually satisfactory situation. And unfortunately, it took a while to get everybody's attention and focus on it. And once we got that, it appears like probably in the next few days we'll have something worked out and come back with a lease amendment for you, perhaps at your first meeting in October.
Thank you, sir.
And if I could, and the reason for the extension is that the current purchase agreement has mid, can't make it the exact date, but a mid-October date for kind of regardless whether for closing, whether or not due diligence is completed or not. That was kind of the drop dead date. So when we talked with the developer, they were in agreement that, we said, initially they said, well, how about 30 days? And we said, well, because still site plan review and approval and those types of things, we kind of hopefully a one-time extension request is what we're proposing, as opposed to a shorter one that maybe isn't quite long enough, and they would have to come back again. And so that's what we proposed, and they're agreeing to that.
Okay, thank you both for your comments. Other questions, comments, council members? Okay, so item number 16179 has been moved by CO, seconded by Gerbach, to acknowledge receipt of the September 15th, 2016 memo from City Manager Campbell to approve the First Amendment to the real estate purchase agreement with 600 North Maple LLC as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion has been approved. Final item under new business is one that had been relocated from the consent agenda, 16-180, to approve the updated investment report as of 8/31/16 as submitted. And so I would entertain a motion to approve or not approve that investment report.
So moved to approve.
Second.
Thank you both. And I had actually been the one to request that move of that consent agenda item. And the reason for that is, in looking at the investment report, it again comes to my mind that while Key Bank has the majority of our monies invested with them, over 60%, the current interest rate is only 0.150. Some of the others, while they're invested differently, have higher interest rates, but with the over $13 million we have invested with that particular financial institution, if we could get just another quarter of a point interest rate adjustment, that would generate somewhere between $30,000 and $35,000 a year for us. And so I'd like to encourage our city manager to see if anything can be done to improve that rate and or consider relocating those funds, at least the majority of them, to some other financial institution. That's the reason for me to bring it up. So, any other questions, comments? All those in favor of approving the investment report then, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Has been approved. Thank you very much. We're now down to the discussion portion of the agenda. Commission, committee, and task force reports from council members. And I'll start that end. Anybody have anything? Nope. Jump over me, and I'll go to Mr. Gerbach, because I know he's got some things.
They'll come up under other reports and announcements.
Reports, okay. So I have just a single one then from the Environmental Commission, and that's a reminder that the County Cleanup Day is coming up on October the 1st. It's co-sponsored by the Environmental Commission. And this is one that is open to any resident of Washtenaw County. It is going to be held at our DPW facility as it has been in previous years. Saturday, October the 1st from 9 in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And you can bring almost anything to this county cleanup day and they'll take it. And I did confirm that they will accept the old style televisions.
Thank you.
So, and their contractor will dispose of them properly. So that was it for me on that particular item. And since there doesn't seem to be any others, we'll move to reports and other announcements.
There's a lot of activities going on in Saline in October, so I wanted to get a couple of the items out for the Historical Society and probably some other plugs that'll come from other individuals. October 2nd is harvest time at the farm, so we're hoping that everyone will be able to come out for that. It's generally from noon to 5. It might start at 11, but generally 12 to 5. There's going to be a lot of activity there, a calf, the other aspects, pumpkin carving, some of those things that we've always done at that time. October 8th is going to be the Rotary Cemetery Tour, I believe, and that is has an admission charge to it. And then this weekend we have Oktoberfest, so we're looking forward to everyone coming out for that. That'll be on Friday and Saturday. And the last item I believe we want to talk about, and I'll let Miss Dillon take the honor for this one. The 150th for our
Oh, okay,
fireworks.
yes. Yeah, it seems early to be talking about it, but that's okay. October 15th, Saline will be hosting fireworks. They will be at Crabtree Field. They are free. Everyone is invited. The gates, meaning all the public parking, will open at 6 p.m. We're encouraging tailgating, but remember, it is school property, so leave your guns, your dogs, your alcohol, and your cigarettes at home, please. And we also have something else from the 150 that I wanted to mention. I just want to grab my flyer so I give you guys all the right information. There will be, in line with the 150th celebration, Historic Homes Tour and Tea. It will be on Sunday, October 16th. There will be flyers around. So, coming around soon. The tea will be held at People's House on Monroe Street. There will be several home tours available for local homes. Tickets will be $25 in advance and available through the Chamber of Commerce.
Janet, can I just step in on that? There will be a tea at 1 o'clock and a tea at 3 o'clock with tours in between. So when you purchase your ticket, you'll purchase a ticket for the tea either at 1 and then do your tours, or you do your tours at the beginning and then have tea after at 3 o'clock. Big plans coming for that, so I'm on that committee. So.
Okay. And the last thing from the 150 under announcements is the new book. Saline, our city book, is now available. It's available here at City Hall. It's $20 for a copy. It's definitely worth every dollar, so please consider picking one up.
Anything else from others? I have one final one then, somewhat associated with the 150th, but that's the dedication of the Orange Risden home location sign on October the 9th, which is Sunday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, taking place down at the cemetery, where his original house placement is just currently marked out with 4 cornerstones, so it'll have an explanation sign. Okay, anything else under that category? No? Okay. Joint Economic Development Meeting, which it's noticed under the upcoming meetings, will be held on September 29th at 6:30 p.m., and that is with City Council and Saline Main Street and Chamber of Commerce folks to be held here. And that's all I know about that particular item. But
if I may, I believe Mayor Morrow will also be sending out a detailed email to City Council with some of the items.
Okay, good, thank you. 150th anniversary discussion item.
Yeah,
Councilmember was added.
I had requested, because I am with the Historical Society and some other aspects, there were some questions about how do people give donations for the fireworks or whatever if they want to continue to donate to the city. But also, just kind of trying to figure out where some of the expenses and things were hitting, because I think some have personally incurred them and some haven't, and we're trying to get a little idea of what's happened. And I just kind of wanted to get an understanding of where we were currently on our budget for it, and I think Ms. Bennett has done a summary for us and has handed it out, and I didn't know if anyone wanted to have a little discussion by her tonight. She's still here? Yes. She's hiding in the back. If she could just give us a brief understanding of where we are right now and what we can do as a council to help encourage support.
Well, I will say that the book sales are coming in really nice right now. We have almost $2,000 worth of book sales, so that's a hot item. They are available online through our city website using a PayPal account, and if you do it online, the cost is $25, and that will cover the shipping and handling in addition to any charges, the $3 that PayPal has on that transaction as well. Fundraising letters went out the 1st of August, and we're starting to get some feedback and some funds in for those. We've asked people, we sent to the Chamber of Commerce listing a nice letter stating that, we're proud to celebrate our 150th heritage. And then the mayor and I will also be sending this week, are going to be sending a letter to some of our direct vendors that we've had relationships that aren't maybe in the chamber listing, and requesting them for some of the donations as well. But anyone as well, of course, will always take money. That's what the city treasurer is supposed to say, correct? Donations for the fireworks can be made directly to City Hall, and the recognition will be based on the monetary donation received. The fireworks posters, and on our website through the City of Saline, and then also on our way, is that still the name of that website? Yes. On our way to 150 is giving us constant information. It's a Facebook page, and that's giving information on it too. So I did hand out briefly the total of the 2 years, because we started this back in FY16. As of to date right now, including the final payment to Wolverine, which we have not done yet. We will not make that payment until after the fireworks. But the total year-to-date expense would be $19,000. The city had budgeted for $27,000, and at this point we've received $3,597.88 to offset those costs and donations. So, and we're still anticipating more funds coming in for donations.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions or any
comments?
Do we have a website to which people can donate? Set up?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
I will look into that. That's a great idea.
Well, I didn't know if we were doing it through one of the other societies or whatever, but that'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other items under discussion? If not, we'll move into the public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act, any citizen may come forward at this time and make comment or question to City Council. This public comment period will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Anyone who would like to speak is requested but not required to state his or her name and address for the record.
Mary Hess, I want to thank Councilman Gearbaugh and McClellan, I apologize, because I was on council when we purchased the industrial park. And the reason that it didn't sell for the last 20 years is because it was industrial. Now the council has changed zoning, so that makes a whole big difference. And I also would like to say that Mrs. Bredernitz and we haven't had a raise for a long time either. And with the grace of God, we'll be able to afford to live in Saline the rest of our lives. It is very expensive. I was hoping, and I've asked it for the seniors to be able to get a membership through the Saline Rec Center, through our Medicare at a cost. And it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. So I'm hoping on behalf of the seniors that we'll be able to utilize the rec center too, instead of the increasing costs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Mitchell. I am a resident of Wildwood subdivision and a city council candidate for the upcoming November election. I wanted to comment on the book, The History. Jim Roth was a teacher of mine. I was born and raised here in Saline, and I had him as a teacher in 10th grade. I'm sorry that he's not here tonight. I would like to recognize the great deal of work that he has done and the service he has given to this city. Certainly, we all have our strong opinions, but leaving that aside, he has done us a tremendous, tremendous service. And I'm so grateful this book is on my bedside table right now. So I do hope that everyone can take advantage of that wonderful resource. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Dorothy Brennan, this again. I agree about the book. I have it also, and Jim Roth did a wonderful job. I worked with him at the Rensler Farms last Saturday, and it was a rainy day, and we had a lot of time to discuss Saline problems, and that's how I got involved with this sewer plant or sanitation business. You know, this new pump or whatever you call it, is that going to solve the smell these people live with? I doubt it. Have you ever gone around to other cities and see how they take care of this problem? Because they have the same sanitation, I would imagine. Have we ever done that?
I can't address that question, ma'am.
Well, I think the city of Saline should do something about that plant down there. It's awful for those people to live there. Maybe they shouldn't pay their taxes and get the city of Saline to do something. What do you think about that?
Well, I can only say that we...
Should they go on a picket or something to get you to do something?
Yeah, we in the city are definitely aware of the concerns around our wastewater treatment plant, and as Mr. Scruggs indicated earlier, we've spent a fair amount of money on it. It's not working yet the way we would like, but we are preparing a request for proposals to specifically address that one single item, and so we are going to work on it.
Now, I understand that Jack Spratt empties their loads there, and the city makes money from that,
well,
I gather.
There's a fee for it, so yes, ma'am.
But does that help make the odor? I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know either. So.
Well, I hope it can get solved. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the public? Seeing none others then, any other business to come before Saline City Council? None? Note then the upcoming meetings of City Council on September 29th, the Joint Economic Development Meeting at 6:30 p.m. These chambers, I do believe.
Mayor Pro Tem Rhodes, can I interrupt for a second? Can I just say that reiterating on the wastewater treatment plant and other things, if you smell, I'm being someone that lives in that neighborhood, I know I've gotten a few Facebook friends that have commented on things, but make sure that you're calling the city or reporting when you do smell. I know we've had that kind of announcement before in the past, but I know it's helpful to try and track what's going on and maybe develop a pattern for things and try and get it fixed. So.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. October 3rd, 2016 is a regular meeting of City Council at 7:30 p.m., as is one on October 24th, 2016, again at 7:30. There are no absences to excuse this evening, so we would declare this meeting, well, no, I can't declare that. I would ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion.
To adjourn this meeting at 9:12.
Yes.
Second?
9:12 p.m. Mr. Gerbaugh moved and Dylan seconded this one. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.